Hello, and welcome to the July Superintendent's Podcast. I am Jeannie McCleary, Superintendent of Union School District. And this month, we are featuring our STEM initiatives at Union School District. With me, I have Bradley Kirkwood, our physics teacher. I also have Jamie Cyphert, our Educational Technology Director. And I have Clayton and Mitchell Marsh, two students in 8th grade. I'd like to start by asking Mr. Kirkwood to talk about one of our iBots Technology Initiative programs. Mr. Kirkwood, if you could please tell us about the iBots program.
Absolutely. This program is funded by manufacturing businesses in Western Pennsylvania because they understand there's a real shortage of workers for the region, in particular in manufacturing. There's not a shortage of jobs in that sense of things. So through this Bots IQ program, it's the intent that not only students in high school have this authentic learning experience to build a robot and fight competitively in California University once a year in April, but the hope is, the real goal behind it is to actually get the students to understand what manufacturing processes are involved and what skills you do have and pick up in high school that are actually needed to see this project to a completion. This year was Union High School's first year of being a part of the Bots IQ program, and we showed up in the end of April and we competed. These gentlemen might be able to tell you a little bit more of the struggle we had while we were there, but regardless, we didn't come in last place. There were over 70 teams from different school districts involved in this competition, and for it being my first time there, I was just totally blown away and impressed by all these students and what it is they'd accomplished. So
would the gentleman like to tell us about your experience?
Yes, it was very interesting. We had showed up with a robot put together, but at the time, the Arduino, which is the brains, had malfunctioned in a sense. It was not working. But even though we couldn't get it working, we had good paperwork solid. So like Mr. Kirkwood had said, we did not come in last. But we did take a lot of notes on how to progress for next year.
Okay, so it sounds like it was a learning experience, and that was the takeaway from it. And it sounds like you probably placed better for next year, just from what you learned this year. Okay. And Mr. Kirkwood,
Sure.
You had mentioned to me in the hallway passing that you didn't necessarily solicit funds for this program,
Correct.
but somehow some money ended up in your lap, let's say.
Sure.
Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So just for the record, the Bots IQ program does fund your team for the first 2 years. They give the sending schools $1,050 the first year, the second year, cut that in half for years 3 and 4, cut that in half for then the remaining of your tenure in the program. These two gentlemen, Mitchell and Clayton, and their non-stop dedication to this program, in conversation with their neighbor, Mr. Stitt, who is a member of the Reimersburg VFW, was telling him about this contest, and he then proceeded to contact me, and we had a conversation about what this program was about. And you know, the next thing I knew, we were, when I say we, I mean myself and Mitchell and Clayton, were standing before the board of the Reimersburg VFW, sort of explaining to them what our competition was all about. And about an hour after that conversation, they gave me a phone call and said, we have a $2,000 check for your program, which it's huge, it's phenomenal. And it just goes to show, I guess, what kind of support, you know, the community leaders around here have for our initiatives that we're trying to push through in the district.
Right. Jamie, could you explain what STEM stands for? That acronym itself for our audience that may not know what STEM is?
STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So those are the 4 main focus areas that a majority of the focus has been on in education as of late. President Obama had a big initiative with STEM trying to encourage students to take part in those 4 categories and kind of pick career paths in those categories because there's so many Department of Census and everything that's suggesting that we need more employees in those areas and we need more workers in those areas. Those particular fields are ones that can't necessarily be shipped overseas. Those are jobs that would stay here and very well paying jobs. And like Mr. Kirkwood had alluded to, a lot of our business and industry in the area is at a shortage, in our local immediate area is at a shortage, and really need employees that focus on those areas. So us using programs like Bots IQ among the whole onslaught of other things that we focus on here at Union, we're really preparing them for those jobs right out of high school. So and especially if they go out of college, it will really give them a head start.
So we're preparing our students through STEM initiatives for a 21st century learner. And instead of those jobs being outsourced to other countries, we're trying to secure those jobs for our students right here in our country right here. And by the level of interest from our students, 2 students right here in particular, we're hearing firsthand the excitement and the student engagement and how learning can be fun. Mitchell, could you talk about not only the learning, but how much fun it was going through this activity?
Well, starting out in high school, I necessarily didn't know what I wanted to do, but once I got in Mr. Kirkwood's classroom, he taught me about technology. And through this, I learned soldering, I learned gear ratios, I learned aerodynamics, I learned lots of things you need for technology. And not only is it interesting, but it's fun. The reward you get from hard work and dedication makes it fun.
Great. Well, I thank both of you for sharing with us and sharing with our audience how much you're learning. And it certainly sounds like I wish I would have had that experience when I was in high school in physics class. So I appreciate your time. Thank you. Another initiative, another STEM initiative I know firsthand, and we've experienced it, and I know you presented in front of our school board,
Right.
Was the 3D printer. And we were the first one in Clarion County, actually the first one in Northwest Pennsylvania, I believe, at the secondary level, to have a 3D printer.
Right.
And we were able to purchase that through a grant,
Mhm.
Mr. Kirkwood, that you wrote. Tell us about the grant that you wrote, and tell us about the 3D printer,
Okay.
and how you have been able to implement that in your class.
Sure. Well, the grant came about in the first place when I believe it was last February of 2014. Mr. Cyphert, Ms. Carady, Mr. Minnick, and myself went to P&C. It's the Pennsylvania Education Technology Exposition and Consortium in Hershey. It's a huge technology session for schools. At this conference, we came across a 3D printer, and they said, "Oh, wouldn't that be cool to have in classroom?" And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, well, what would I do with it? What would I print?
And you were probably thinking, how are we going to
how are we
afford
going to get it?
Yeah.
How are we going to get it?
How is the district going to pay for this, and how is Mrs. McCleary going to approve it? Yes.
Right. So at the time, at the time I was working on a grant for my electronics club on the order of about $5,000, and it really wasn't going where I wanted to. So I got to thinking, with our REACH program we have in the morning, what could I do with my 8th grade students? Because I was talking about engineering things that I could maybe write this proposal and see if they liked it enough that they would fund it. So I wrote a proposal to the Toshiba America Foundation on the order of about $5,000, and just said, we'd like to use this to help so students could print bridges, not just make them out of popsicle sticks and everything else like I've done when I was in high school, but let's print them. Let's have them design them and print them. So I wrote the proposal. It got accepted, and before that year was out, we had it. Now, everyone thought it was fantastic. It's still fantastic. What I've used it for this year now, being, say, a 1-year veteran of 3D printing, in my physics lab, one of the things, I kind of look at my physics lab as sort of like applied art class. How can we use technology to sort of do pretty cool things? And one thing that I had my students do was design from scratch and 3D print a rocket. So one of the uses that I'm trying to implement for this 3D printer that we've got through the Toshiba grant was in my physics lab, which I kind of look at as my own applied art class, was how can we make stuff, you know, and then conduct experiments based upon what we've made. And one project the students sort of came across was, well, let's design a rocket from scratch. Let's design everything about it. So we talk about, you know, the aerodynamics and all this other business, the thrust, etc. They printed the rocket from scratch. The only thing, they designed everything about it with the exception of the engines. Those were the only things that we used that was pre-manufactured. And it was pretty impressive, pretty neat to see, you know, in late fall, taking something that knowing that they designed on their own, out to the baseball field and just watched it go a couple hundred feet in the air and come back down and be just as durable, if not more durable than, you know, something that we would have not only had to make ourselves, which would have taken a heck of a lot longer, but it would have cost us more money, you know. So that's kind of where my mind has been going this year, is learning how to use those.
And one thing I read, Mr. Kirkwood, was where hospitals and engineers are using a 3D printer for prosthetics.
Oh, absolutely.
Where they're creating and manufacturing using a 3D printer to make the prosthetic for humans.
Right.
And when I think about how we are preparing our students for 21st century learners, and preparing them for college,
right,
and for technical schools, that's exactly what we're doing. We are exposing them to this equipment, this engineering equipment, for them to go into college already prepared with that skill set. That without this equipment, this grant that you wrote, they'd never have that experience.
Right, and a quick comment on that is one of my senior students, Brandon Spencer, about a month ago, this was in April, came back to me from a trip to, I believe it was Duquesne University, and said, Mr. Kirkwood, it was the coolest thing ever. They were using 3D printers down there. Some of the students had never seen before as college students. They learned how to do it in college. They also had Arduinos, which are programmable microcontrollers, which we also have those through a U Foundation grant as well. He says, you know, we're doing this in high school, and this is something that a huge university is trying to teach their students how to do. So, you know, I think while we might not necessarily know which way the arrow is pointing, I can at least say it's forward.
It's forward, in the right direction.
Yes,
Excellent.
yes.
Thank you for sharing. Speaking of the right direction, even an aerial
Sure.
footage along those lines, Mr. Cyphert, another initiative we purchased this year through the Union Enhancement Foundation was a drone. And we've been hearing a lot of media coverage about drones, along the lines of Homeland Security, actually, since one was hovering around the White House. But let's talk about our drone here at Union School District. And I know you spearheaded this initiative. So could you touch base on our drone that we have and how we're using it, since I know you, like I said, you spearheaded that?
The idea basically came about because, you know, being a technology person, I decided to purchase my own drone and, you know, found it interesting and everything, and I thought, what a wonderful tool for Union School District to have, not only for video and cinematography for our digital media class, but also for our physics class and also for our poli-science classes, to be able to talk about, you know, the regulations and stuff that's coming out. And physics, obviously, it's pretty straightforward. The flight of something that doesn't even necessarily have wings. There's a lot of stuff and rotating parts, if I can use the pun, involved around that, and that really gives Mr. Kirkwood and Mr. Pattison in our science department a platform to talk about those things. Actually seeing a drone is something that not a lot of people get to experience. So having one here in the district is very important whenever we talk about you know, the ramifications of regulations and things like that. So it's really been a powerful tool for a whole facet of classes that we teach here at Union, and it really has proven to be something that we just wouldn't be able to call ourselves the leaders if we didn't have that sort of technology. And it's been excellent for community outreach and recording. So far, we've only had it for about a month now, and we've already recorded a 5K for Eccles-Lesher Foundation. We'll be able to use the digital media class to record or to publish a video for them to kind of sponsor their race. We'll use it for sporting events here. We've recorded a few track events and baseball just to kind of capture the good things that are happening here at Union.
And how excited are the kids when the kids are first introduced to the 3D printer, when the kids are first introduced to the drone? It's the first time they have laid eyes on this type of equipment. What kind of reaction are you seeing as instructors?
Well, when we first got the 3D printer, there were some students that hadn't asked me, maybe, this was in late April at the time, they hadn't asked me maybe 5 questions all year, and then that one single day when they saw this printing, I couldn't make them be quiet. They were just going off the rail.
Then it was classroom management issues.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
But it was great because it's I can speak to that aspect of things. It's certainly an engaging thing, and it's kind of neat, when the students walk in the room, they hear it sort of buzzing around doing its thing. They usually walk in and they take a peek over and say, well, what are you printing now? What's being printed? And the cool thing about it is I have it in my room. I tell them, look, it's yours to use. Just let me know what you want to do and go ahead and do it.
So you see participation levels increase, attendance increase,
Absolutely.
Probably grades increase because the student engagement increases.
There's more of an authentic learning component to
Excellent.
it, and that's what would, I think, hook students who would otherwise not have much interest.
Great, great. Don't take this the wrong way, Mr. Kirkwood,
Sure.
but typically physics isn't like, yay, I want to go to physics class.
And it's more like a stomach ache to some.
Okay. But now you're seeing just the opposite happen.
Right.
Right. And with the drone, natural excitement, Mr. Cyphert?
The natural excitement, is obviously encouraging for everybody, but the real excitement for me is whenever these fabulous pieces of equipment become tools in their everyday learning. Whenever they're faced with an obstacle, they think abstractly and use the drone as a tool to record or to do something that will supplement their learning. So rather than the 3D printer or the drone being the focal points for the day, it's just another tool that they're using. And that's really exciting because whenever they get into the workforce, we don't want them to dwell on new technology. We want them to use it as a way to assist them in performing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're seeing this year, especially with the 3D printer being that it's had a year to kind of, I don't want to say lose its luster, but kind of work its way into curriculum and work its way into what students can imagine it doing. It really is exciting for Mr. Kirkwood and myself and the other faculty to be able to see them actually using it as a byproduct of learning.
So it's not a toy by any means.
Oh,
It's not a novelty piece, but it's a tool, as you said. It's a resource, and they're using these resources as you said, products to troubleshoot, to
Right.
be resourceful in trying to get to the end product. So, what a great way to make our curriculum robust and not just use a textbook.
Absolutely.
Or the internet to come up with sources of information. So how exciting for our students and for our school district. And I think it truly is a testament to both of you for spearheading these initiatives. And I like to think that you're leading by example and really being great role models for our colleagues and for our district by taking the lead
Thank you.
and generating this level of excitement. And I appreciate you being here and being part of the Superintendent's podcast and sharing with our audience and our community what's going on in our school district. So thank you very much.
Thank you.